In the last video, I mentioned how a lot of people want to just get rid of their anxiety. They want to make it go away. And then I explained how not having anxiety can actually be a dangerous thing. Your anxiety response is something that keeps you safe from harm or from doing really stupid things. So, if your goal isn't to get rid of your anxiety, what is it? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. The goal that we're going to be working towards throughout this series is to become more differentiated. Differentiation is one of those fancy psychology buzzwords like boundaries or vulnerability that once you hear it, you're going to notice it popping up all over the place. The basic concept of differentiation is really simple. A differentiated person is really good at doing two things. One, they're really good at separating their thoughts from their feelings. And number two, they have developed the skill of separating their own thoughts and feelings from the thoughts and feelings of others. So, in this video, we're going to talk about the first thing, how to separate your own thoughts from your own feelings. I want to start by talking about perception. Douglas Adams says, everything you see or hear or experience in any way at all is specific to you. You create a universe by perceiving it. So, everything in the universe you perceive is specific to you. So here's how perception works. First, you experience a stimulus. You might observe something or overhear something. You might witness something or even imagine something. Then the neurons in your body respond super fast, almost instantaneously, and you feel something. That feeling, that sensation, or that emotion then gets turned into a thought. And then finally, there's a behavior, a response. And all of this happens in like an instant. It happens oftentimes without us even consciously thinking about it. So I'll give you a really easy example. First, the stimulus. I put my hand on a hot stove and I feel that heat, that burning sensation. Then I have a feeling, pain, the feeling of burning. Then my thought is immediately take your hand off the stove. So I take my hand off the stove, and that is the action. That's the behavior. You can see how quickly all of that happens. Now, in the context of a relationship, this is going to look a little bit different. Here's an example. The stimulus might be you hear your partner walking down the hallway and it snaps you out of this trance that you've been in as you were scrolling on your phone for an embarrassingly long time. And the feeling that you feel is this wave of shame and embarrassment that you haven't been very productive that day. Then, as your partner walks into the room, you have all these thoughts. Oh my gosh, my partner doesn't like me. They're disappointed in me. They think I'm a bad husband or a wife. I'm a failure. And your thoughts start to kind of spiral out of control. And then finally is the behavior. You snap at your partner as they walk into the room. You treat them with defensiveness or hostility because you perceive them as being an antagonist, an enemy towards you instead of your ally and your partner. And all of this happens because of the stuff that was going on in your head and in your body. Okay, here's another one. The stimulus is you open up the dishwasher. Everything's just crammed in there. It's disorganized. And you even notice that the cutting board is positioned in the dishwasher so that the spray and the soap can't get to the silverware or the plates. Now, the feeling that you have right after that happens is this rush of anger and resentment and maybe even a little bit of loneliness. The thoughts that you have are that my partner is so stupid. I can't believe they don't know how to load a dishwasher. Are they doing this on purpose because they think that if they do it poorly, that I won't ask them to do it again in the future? Why do I have to do all this stuff by myself? I'm already pulling more than my fair share in our relationship. And I feel like adding this onto my plate is just too much. And so you have all these chaotic, negative, anxious thoughts pop into your head. And then finally, the behavior is that you maybe call your partner into the kitchen to scold them or lecture them on how to properly load a dishwasher. Or maybe you give them the silent treatment or withhold sex from them as punishment for not loading the dishwasher appropriately. It could be any number of things. This whole process of stimulus, feeling, thought, and then a behavior happens so quickly. And I want to point out one thing that's almost always true. These anxious thoughts that pop into your head when you're feeling overwhelmed or upset, they're almost never 100% true. Most of them are your vision of what the worst case scenario would be. You see, your brain is incredibly good at catastrophizing and horribleizing, dreaming up worst case scenarios. And this is what puts so much strain on your relationships. So now that you understand how perception works and how you create your own version of reality in your brain, now we can talk about what it looks like to separate your own thoughts from your own feelings. To do this, you need to master a couple of skills. The first skill is learning to identify your anxious emotions quickly. Honestly, most of us are not very good at recognizing the emotions we're feeling in the moment that we're feeling them. This is a skill that comes with practice. Being able to recognize what it feels like when you're feeling jealous or annoyed or betrayed or humiliated is super important to this process. You need to understand how that emotion shows up in your body. What are the physiological sensations that you feel when you feel specific emotions so that you can learn to recognize that, hey, I'm having an anxiety response here. Second, you need to learn to not immediately believe your thoughts. These worst case scenario catastrophic thoughts that creep their way into your head, you don't choose them. They're part of being human. It's normal for anxious thoughts like this to show up completely unprovoked. This is kind of what your brain has evolved to do. You get a couple of facts, and then your brain takes those facts and then fills in the gaps, typically with the worst case scenario, to make some sort of meaning out of it. Like maybe your husband is getting home late from work a couple nights a week, and you start to wonder, is he cheating on me? Or maybe you're making love and your wife starts laughing and you automatically assume she's making fun of the size of your penis. These stories that you make up in your head are rarely 100% true. And learning to question them before you just accept them carte blanche is a really healthy skill to develop. The third and final skill that you need to learn is to take advantage of what I call the gap. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl says, between a stimulus and a response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So between those anxious feelings that you feel and those catastrophic thoughts that you think, and then taking action, there's a small gap. And most of us might not even have known that that gap is there because we've never looked for it. But I think we can all relate to this example from my life. So when I was a kid, I got into trouble with my mom and she was lecturing me. She was really upset and kind of laying into me. And then the phone rang and she picked up the phone and was like, hello. And she was using the sweetest, most kind, gentle voice on the planet. And I was like, what the heck? It's like somebody had flipped a switch and my mother had completely transformed before my eyes. And that's because my mom in that moment was choosing a different response to the stimulus that she was feeling. And we're all capable of this. So the goal here is to notice the emotion that comes up for you when you're feeling anxious, be able to recognize it quickly, doubt the thoughts that pop into your head that are often the catastrophic worst case scenario thoughts, and then learn to take advantage of the gap that happens after the stimulus, but before your response to choose something that's more healthy and more appropriate. And as you do this, you're going to find that you are less anxious. You're going to find that your relationships start to improve. You're going to have less mood swings and less explosive arguments. You're going to worry less. You're going to feel more safe and more secure and grounded in reality. And overall, you're just going to feel more empowered. Now, as we go through the rest of this series, I'm going to be giving you some activities that you can utilize to start putting some of these ideas into practice. But for right now, I just want you to focus on understanding the concept and seeing how it shows up in your life. So now I'm curious, what did you learn about today's lesson? What stood out to you? And what are you going to do differently going forward? I would love it if you would leave your thoughts and ideas down in the comments.